My wife had an affair with her coworker while carrying what I thought was my son. After the baby was born, I found his message saying, "He's just like me." DNA proved the truth, and her whole fantasy shattered the moment I filed for divorce. Hey, Reddit! My marriage looked solid from the outside, but behind closed doors things slowly fell apart until I had no choice but to walk away. What started as small red flags turned into something way bigger than I ever expected. Before I get into the mess, let me take it from the start. My name's Levi, I'm 32, and I work in IT support. Nothing complicated. Steady job, decent pay, predictable hours. I've always liked routine and keeping my life in order. People usually describe me as dependable, calm, and someone who handles things without making drama out of everything. I met Megan when I was 19 and a sophomore in college. She was 18, a freshman, and honestly one of the easiest people to talk to back then. She had this warm personality that made everyone feel like she actually cared. She hugged her friends all the time, laughed a lot, and had this gentle way of speaking that made her seem relaxed even during midterms. Compared to her, I was a lot more grounded and straightforward, but we clicked fast. We met in a study lounge because she asked to borrow my phone charger. We ended up talking for hours about random things. Classes, music, part-time jobs. It wasn't deep or complicated, but it felt comfortable. We exchanged numbers, went on a couple of dates, and within a few months we were basically together every day. After a year, she moved into the apartment I shared with a roommate. It wasn't planned or dramatic, it just made sense. My roommate didn't mind, and Megan and I fell into an easy routine. She liked cooking. I handled dishes. She organized things. I kept track of bills. We didn't fight much. Life felt straightforward. And for two college kids, we were more stable than most adults we knew. By the time I was 22, I had a full-time job. Megan was finishing her degree and we were already talking long-term. She used to say she felt safe with me, that I wasn't like the guys her friends dated, the ones who couldn't hold a job or even show up on time. I wasn't trying to impress her. That was just how I was. I didn't like leaving things messy or undone. We lived together for a few years before getting married, and honestly, those years were good. Megan was affectionate, always touching me in small ways, hugging from behind, holding my hand while watching movies. She left me notes on the counter before class. "Have a good day." She'd fall asleep on my chest during movies. We didn't have major issues. When I proposed at 24, she cried instantly, the kind of crying where she covered her face with her hands. Our wedding was small, simple, and honestly perfect for us. We didn't have money for anything fancy, but it didn't matter. After the wedding, we bought a small two-bedroom house. It wasn't huge, but it felt like a real step into adulthood. I spent weekends fixing things, painting walls, setting up small projects. Megan filled the house with photos, plants, decorations. She had a good eye for that stuff. A year later, she got pregnant with our daughter. That moment changed everything for me. I wasn't nervous. It felt right. I held the ultrasound photos like they were something priceless Megan loved, that I talked to her belly every night. She'd grab my hand whenever the baby kicked. When our daughter was born, I stepped into the dad role instantly. I handled late-night diaper changes, early morning feedings, bottle prep, daycare runs, whatever needed to get done. I didn't see it as helping Megan. I saw it as being a father. Our daughter and I bonded fast. She liked to fall asleep on my shoulder and would crawl into my lap with her toys every afternoon. I wasn't perfect, but I was present. Megan used to brag to her friends about how involved I was. She'd say, "I'm lucky. Levi actually shows up." And I didn't think of it as anything special, but I guess a lot of guys don't do the basics. When our daughter turned 2, our life looked incredibly stable. Weekday routines, early dinners, small weekend outings to parks or the zoo. We had inside jokes, family photos on the fridge, a clean house with toys always scattered in the living room. People would tell us we were the kind of couple that made young marriage look easy. And I believed that. I believed everything was solid, predictable in a good way. From the outside, we looked like a strong young family, building something real. Inside, nothing seemed wrong. Not yet. Megan found out she was pregnant with our second child, about 2 years after our daughter was born. She told me in the kitchen one night, holding the test in her hand. Looking excited and a little overwhelmed, I hugged her, lifted her off the ground a little, and she laughed. It felt like good news. We'd handled parenting well so far, and having another kid seemed like the natural next step. When we learned it was a boy later on, she cried again. I remember her saying she felt complete. I took it seriously and stepped up even more than before. I didn't want her stressed about anything. I went to every appointment, handled every form, wrote reminders in my phone so I wouldn't miss anything. I took over most of the chores without thinking twice. Cooking, dishes, laundry, grocery runs. I did whatever made her life easier. If she said she was tired, I'd take care of our daughter for the night bath, brushing teeth, bedtime story, all of it. At first, Megan seemed grateful. She'd say thanks here and there, and she'd rub her belly while watching me make dinner or clean up toys. But little by little, she started acting differently. It wasn't one big moment. It was small changes that didn't feel like red flags at the time. She became colder. Not icy, just less warm. Shorter responses. Less patience. She'd roll her eyes at things she used to laugh at. She was annoyed by small stuff, like how I folded towels or if I didn't hear her the first time she said something, our daughter would try to show her drawings or toys, and Megan would glance at them but not really engage. She'd say she was tired or that her back hurt, so I didn't push anything. The changes with Megan were gradual, but the phone was the clearest sign. She started keeping it face down, taking it into the bathroom, and tilting the screen away whenever I walked into the room. If it buzzed, she'd grab it immediately. She used to leave it on the counter without thinking. Now, it might as well have been glued to her hand. Anytime I asked a basic question, "Are you feeling okay?" Or, "Who are you talking to?" she acted like I was interrogating her. "You're controlling. You're suffocating me. Stop asking questions. You're insecure." Those words weren't shouted. They were tossed out like grenades, fast and practiced, just to shut me down. The weird part was that I wasn't even questioning anything major. It would be something like, "Are you feeling okay today?" Or, "Do you want me to start dinner, or do you want to pick the place?" She acted like normal questions were some kind of interrogation. At this point, I didn't suspect cheating. I honestly thought maybe the pregnancy hormones were hitting her differently this time because she hadn't been like this when she was pregnant with our daughter. She'd been emotional then too, but more sentimental, not irritated. She started mentioning a coworker named Connor around this time as well. Nothing dramatic, just casual things like, "Connor said the meeting was pointless," or "Connor helped me carry some files," or "Connor told me about this show we should watch." It sounded normal at first. People talk about coworkers. I didn't think twice. But then I noticed she mentioned him more than anyone else. Not in a bragging way, just enough that I knew his name more than I knew anyone else from her job. If I made a light comment like, "You talk about him a lot," she'd snap instantly. "I can have friends, Levi." You always assume the worst. And again, I wasn't accusing anything, I was making a passing comment. But she reacted like I'd just accused her of cheating. Our daughter picked up on the tension in ways she didn't have words for. She was only a toddler, but kids notice tone. Whenever Megan raised her voice, even a little, she'd walk over and wrap her arms around my leg. During movies and bedtime, she'd scoot closer to my side and ask me to be the one to read. She never said, "Something's wrong," but her behavior said it for her. I kept everything calm for her. No fights in front of her. If Megan snapped, I just lowered my voice and ended the conversation. I didn't push anything. My goal was to keep the house peaceful for our daughter, even when Megan seemed irritated at random moments. But the more Megan pulled away, the more attention she seemed to enjoy from other people. I saw it in small ways. How she reacted when someone complimented her hair, or how she lit up when her phone buzzed while she was smiling at the screen. That look wasn't one she gave me anymore. Still, at this point, nothing felt like solid evidence of anything. Just a growing distance, rising tension, and Megan acting like perfectly normal questions were some kind of attack. If someone had told me then that this was the start of everything falling apart, I wouldn't have believed them. But looking back now, this is exactly where the shift began. By that point, the phone thing was constant. The same flipped screen, the same secret smiles, the same quick lock whenever I got too close. Nothing about it felt like a phase anymore. She began staying late at work more, giving rushed, vague explanations and snapping when I asked how long she'd be. At the same time, she put extra effort into how she looked for work. New clothes, more makeup, styled hair, especially on days Connor was scheduled, but not for our time together. When I'd compliment her or ask simple questions like, "How was work?" or "Are you feeling okay?" she reacted with irritation and coldness, accusing me of being too much, even though I was just trying to check in. Around this time, my parents invited us over for dinner. They hadn't seen Megan in a while and wanted to check on her pregnancy. I told Megan about it, expecting her to agree, because she usually liked spending time with them. Instead, she shook her head immediately. "I'm too tired. You guys go without me." I offered to stay home with her, thinking she might want the company. She shot that down quickly. "No, just take our daughter, it's fine." There was something off about the way she insisted. She didn't look tired. She looked nervous or irritated, like the idea of sitting with my family was suddenly unbearable. That night, I took our daughter to my parents' house. She kept asking, "Mommy coming later?" The whole ride there, I didn't know what to say, so I just told her mommy needed rest. My mom noticed right away that something was different, but she didn't push. She just said, "Is everything okay at home?" I said yes because I didn't have an explanation yet. When we got home, Megan was lying on the couch scrolling through her phone, not sleeping, not resting, just scrolling. She didn't ask how dinner was or how our daughter behaved. She just nodded and acted like nothing mattered. Intimacy had already disappeared by then. Megan told me early in the pregnancy that she was uncomfortable or too tired, so I accepted it. But as the weeks went by, it didn't feel like a physical thing anymore. She avoided any closeness, no cuddling, no touching, no small moments. If I tried to wrap my arm around her on the couch, she'd shift away. If I kissed her cheek, she'd say, "Not now, Levi." It didn't feel like pregnancy. It felt like she didn't want me near her. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't looking for cheating. I just felt something had changed. The kind of change you can't describe perfectly, but you feel every day in small moments. Her tone, her distance, her fake smiles, her phone habits, all of it. I tried keeping the peace. No arguing, no accusations, no dramatic scenes. I just kept doing what I always did, taking care of our daughter, handling the house, going to work, supporting Megan where I could. But even with all that, the marriage didn't feel the same anymore. It felt like I was carrying the weight of keeping us steady while she drifted further away, mentally and emotionally. Still, even then, cheating never crossed my mind. Something was wrong. I just didn't know how wrong it really was. Our son was born early in the morning, after Megan's scheduled C-section. The whole drive to the hospital, she barely spoke to me. She stared out the window, rubbing her stomach, and checking her phone between contractions. I tried making small talk, asked if she was comfortable, if she wanted music, if she needed anything, but her answers were short. I chalked it up to nerves. Surgery isn't fun for anyone. Once we got checked in, everything moved fast. Nurses came in one after another, asking questions, taking vitals. I stood beside her the entire time, signing paperwork, giving insurance cards, answering whatever they asked. Megan kept looking at her phone even as the nurse was placing her IV. When the nurse said, "Han, I need your arm relaxed," Megan sighed like she was annoyed to be interrupted. During the operation, I stayed by Megan's head while the doctors worked behind the curtain. She didn't look at me much. She didn't hold my hand the way she did when our daughter was born. I kept telling her she was doing great, that we were almost there, but she just nodded, eyes unfocused. When our son finally cried, the doctor lifted him over the curtain for us to see. I felt something, I won't lie, but Megan barely reacted. She looked, smiled for a second, then looked away again. I kissed her forehead and told her I loved her. She didn't say it back. In recovery, I held our son while Megan slept. He was tiny, quiet, almost too still. I brushed his cheek with my thumb, whispering that I'd take care of him. That's just who I am. No matter what Megan's behavior was like, the baby was innocent. I wasn't thinking anything beyond that. Later that afternoon, I called my parents to come meet him and arranged for my mom to bring our daughter. I met them in the lobby and walked them up. When our daughter came in, Megan suddenly lit up. She talked sweetly, kissed her forehead, hugged her tight. She acted like the version of herself I hadn't seen in months. The nurses smiled, probably thinking we were just a normal, happy family. But as soon as our daughter stepped out with my parents again, Megan went back to being distant. Short responses, cold tone, barely looking at me. Near the end of the day, a nurse came in with a package, some paperwork, and a chart. She casually said, "Oh, and a friend of your wife dropped something off earlier." I put it on the counter. I turned to Megan. She blinked twice, confused for a second, then forced a shrug. "Probably someone from work," she said, too quickly. The nurse left. I checked the counter, just a small bag of snacks and a card that said, "Congrats, Mama," with no signature. The handwriting stopped me for a second. I recognized it from a photo Megan had once shown me from the office Connors. Megan didn't move to look at it. She picked up her phone instead. I didn't push it, but something twisted in my gut. A friend dropping something off in person? No text warning me? No one saying they were coming? It didn't add up, especially with how defensive she'd been lately. Later that night, I asked her directly, "Who dropped that off?" She didn't look up from her phone. "I told you. Probably someone from work. Stop overthinking." I let it go out loud, but in my head, that was the moment the suspicion started to take shape. After we got home a couple days later, things didn't improve. Megan stayed glued to her phone every chance she got. She would turn her body away from me while texting. She'd smile, then wipe the smile off her face when I walked into the room. She barely spoke unless it was about the baby needing something. A week after we came home, Megan was getting ready to shower. She left her phone on the bed and said, "Can you check if my mom texted?" She wanted an update. I picked up the phone. As soon as I pressed the button to wake the screen, a notification popped up before I even unlocked it. "Connor, he's just like me." I froze. Not in panic. More like my brain shutting off for a second. I opened her messages without hesitation. She'd never changed her passcode, not for years. The conversation was long, hundreds of messages. I scrolled. Messages from months back. Photos she sent him that she never sent me late-night paragraphs about her feelings. Him saying he missed her. Her saying she wished he was at appointments with her. Him calling the baby, our little guy. Then I found the part I didn't know I needed to see. Megan. I don't see my marriage lasting anyway. There was no misinterpreting anything. No emotional friendship. No harmless flirting. It was an affair. Full emotional and physical relationship. Carried out while she was carrying my son. Or at least, who I thought was my son. The messages about the pregnancy made my stomach tighten. Connor. Can't wait to see him. He's another me LOL. Megan. Of course. He's yours. I kept scrolling. Her trashing me. He's boring. He doesn't make me feel anything anymore. He thinks he's so stable, but he's just controlling. Every complaint she ever threw at me suddenly made sense. When I finished reading, I placed her phone exactly where it had been. I didn't slam it. I didn't confront her. I didn't make a sound. I walked into the living room, picked up our daughter's toys, and sat on the couch with her. While she watched cartoons, Megan showered like nothing was happening. I didn't give her any clue that I'd seen her entire secret life. But while I sat there, with my daughter leaning on me and our newborn sleeping in the bassinet, the truth was already settled in my mind. I didn't know if the baby was mine. And now I had to know. That night, when Megan went to sleep, I ordered DNA kits quietly, carefully, without hesitation. It felt like the only logical step before making any decision that could affect my daughter's entire life. I needed the truth, both truths. Not just for the newborn, but for her too. I wasn't going to let even a fraction of doubt hang over her head. The kits arrived 3 days later in a plain box. I picked them up off the porch before Megan even realized a package was there. I slid them under a stack of folded towels in the closet until I could do everything without raising suspicion. The first sample was the newborn's. It was easier than I expected. He was half asleep after a feeding. His mouth relaxed. I gently swabbed the inside of his cheek, whispered to him to stay still. Even though he couldn't understand a word, I sealed the swab and tucked it into a book on the shelf until I had the other samples ready. My daughter's swab needed more timing. That one mattered the most to me. She was brushing her teeth before bedtime when I asked her to open her mouth for a little check. She didn't question it. She always trusted me. I swabbed her cheek fast and clean, then helped her finish brushing. She ran to her bed afterward and asked for her usual story. I read to her like nothing was different, but the truth was, I was holding the most important piece of information I would ever collect in my life right there in my hand. After she fell asleep, I took my own swab in the bathroom, sealed it, and packed everything exactly how the instructions said. Megan was in the living room on her phone while I walked out to the mailbox. I dropped the envelope in and didn't look back. She didn't even notice I left the house for a moment. The waiting period was the longest stretch of forced normalcy I've ever had to maintain. Megan was more entitled and dismissive than ever. She criticized the way I folded laundry, said I didn't clean the bottles right, complained I wasn't present enough, even though I was doing everything around the house. She stayed glued to her phone. She'd tilt the screen away whenever I walked by. She'd smile at messages, then wipe the smile off her face the second she realized I saw. She'd spend long stretches in the bedroom, texting with the door halfway closed. She didn't know I already knew everything. Still, I didn't argue, I didn't confront. I didn't show emotion. I kept things level for my daughter, who had already sensed something was wrong long before I did. She clung to me more, sat closer during movies, asked me to carry her more often. I didn't mind. She was the one thing keeping my head straight through the whole mess. Meanwhile, Megan kept texting Connor. She tried to hide it better, but she wasn't careful enough. I'd see his name pop up on her screen sometimes when she forgot to flip it over fast enough. Her tone changed when she talked to him, lighter, almost desperate sometimes. But I also noticed something else. She wasn't getting the same energy back. She'd type long messages, then wait, and waited longer. Her sighs grew sharper. She'd delete texts she wrote before sending them. It was obvious Connor was responding less and less. I didn't feel satisfaction, just confirmation. 5 days after I mailed the samples, the results hit my inbox early in the morning. Megan was in the kitchen, half asleep, making coffee. Our daughter was playing with blocks on the floor. The newborn was in the bassinet beside me. I picked up my phone and opened the email. First result, daughter 100% probability of paternity. For a moment, I breathed normally for the first time in weeks. I didn't smile, but every muscle in my body loosened. That was my daughter. No matter what Megan had done, that little girl was mine. No question, no doubt. I glanced over at her building a tower on the floor, completely unaware of anything going on around her. That result alone gave me the strength to handle everything that was coming next. Second result, newborn son. 0% probability of paternity. I didn't react outwardly. I just stared at the number like it was a simple math answer. Inside, it felt like the floor dropped out from under me for a second. Then everything went cold and clear. There was no real shock, not after everything I'd read on her phone. I'd known the answer before I even ordered the test. But seeing it spelled out removed any last thread of denial, and any excuse to stay. The baby I'd held in the delivery room wasn't mine. The child she expected me to raise wasn't mine. The pieces finally fit together with perfect clarity. The marriage was over. Fully, completely, permanently. I took the results to a lawyer right away. We filed the paperwork to establish that I wasn't the legal father of the newborn. Megan didn't contest it. She knew exactly what the test would show. Within a short time, it was formal. On paper and in reality, he wasn't my child. I didn't tell Megan the results that day. I didn't tell her that week. Instead, I prepared quietly and effectively. Over the next couple of weeks, I separated our finances. I split our bank accounts, closed joint credit cards, and removed her from every financial login: insurance, utilities, online accounts. I collected documents, printed statements, saved screenshots. I backed up everything I'd seen on her phone. I packed a small folder with everything I'd need for a lawyer. I made a list of custody arrangements for our daughter. I didn't move out, and I didn't ask her to. I didn't give her any reason to think anything was off. I treated her with the same calm neutrality I would give a coworker. Cold, but polite, detached, but composed. During this time, Megan kept texting Connor like her life depended on it. She sent long messages, tried to get his attention, tried to pull him closer. He still responded, but his replies were short, less frequent, sometimes hours apart. I could see her frustration building, but I didn't care about their little fantasy relationship anymore. I cared about my daughter. I cared about protecting her from the fallout, and I cared about leaving this marriage with everything in order. Now that I knew the truth, I was ready to end it. All I needed was the right moment. I waited until our daughter was asleep before doing anything. I didn't want raised voices. I didn't want her hearing things she shouldn't. Once I checked that she was out cold, hugging her stuffed bunny, breathing steady, I walked back into the living room where Megan was sitting on the edge of the couch, scrolling through her phone. I stood in front of her and said, calm and direct, "We need to talk." She didn't even look up at first. About what? Her tone was annoyed, like I was interrupting her show. Not starting the most important conversation of our marriage, I sat down across from her so she couldn't avoid looking at me. "I saw your messages with Connor." Her head snapped up instantly. Eyes wide, but then she blinked fast and tried to gather herself. "What messages?" she asked, acting confused. "What are you talking about?" "I saw everything," I said. "All of it." That's when she dropped the act. She didn't admit it. She doubled down. "You're invading my privacy. You're being insecure. You're controlling." Every line she had used for months came out again like she was reading from a list. She even tried to cry, wiping at her eyes dramatically, even though no tears were there yet. I didn't respond to any of it. I kept my voice even. I didn't lean forward or raise my tone. "You had a relationship with him. Emotional. Physical. You talked about leaving me. You talked about him being the father." She finally stopped pretending when she saw I wasn't reacting to her deflection. Her breathing got uneven. Her face flushed. She looked like someone whose backup plan just caught on fire. I was confused," she stuttered. "You weren't there for me. You were distant. I was pregnant and emotional." "You were cheating," I said. Short. Simple. That shut her up completely. For a second, she was totally silent. Then she tried a different strategy. Actual crying this time. "Levi, please, I made mistakes. I didn't know how to talk to you." I was feeling alone. I didn't mean for any of it to go that far. I let her talk until she ran out of excuses. Then I said, "There's something else." She froze. "What do you mean?" "I did a DNA test," I said. "He's not my son." Her face went pale so quickly it was like someone flipped a switch. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She covered her face with her hands and started shaking her head, like she could erase reality by refusing to accept it. "No, no, no. Levi, please, please don't do this. I can explain." You can't explain biology, I said. That was when the breakdown really started. She slid off the couch onto her knees, grabbing my leg like she expected me to pull her up. She was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. I messed up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please don't leave. Please don't take our daughter away. Please. I leaned down, removed her hands from my leg, and stood up. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. She gasped like she'd been hit. Levi, please, please, you can't. This marriage ended the moment you decided someone else should be the father of your child. I'm done. She wasn't just crying anymore. She was panicking. I could see it. She knew Connor wasn't stepping up to be some heroic replacement. She knew she'd blown up her stable life, her financial security, her family, everything. And she knew I wasn't bluffing. I walked out of the room, leaving her on the floor. I filed the divorce paperwork the next morning. Megan didn't argue. She cried through the whole meeting with the mediator, but she didn't fight it. She moved out 2 days later, taking the newborn with her. I kept the house for our daughter's stability. The early days of separation were awkward, but civil. We texted only about our daughter, drop-off times, school reminders, small things. Megan stopped looking me in the eyes, like she was afraid to see how little I felt for her now. I noticed something else. She was glued to her phone even more. She was texting Connor constantly. Long messages, lots of typing, but fewer replies. He still responded, but slower, shorter. Sometimes hours between messages, sometimes not at all. I didn't need to see her screen to know he was pulling away. Cheaters rarely handle consequences well, and Connor clearly didn't sign up for a single mom with a fresh divorce and a newborn. She was losing him, and she knew it. 2 weeks later, I drove to Megan's temporary apartment to pick up our daughter for the weekend. She was waiting near the parking lot, holding our daughter's backpack, but she kept glancing behind her like she was expecting someone. I knew immediately something was off. I got out, opened the back door, and crouched down so my daughter could run to me. She hugged me the way she always did, tight and warm. I lifted her into the car and buckled her in. As I closed the door, I heard footsteps behind me. When I turned, Connor stepped out from between 2 cars like he'd been hiding there. He looked even weaker in person than I expected. Skinny, nervous energy, a fake tough guy posture, but he squared his shoulders like he wanted a showdown. Megan stood behind him with her arms crossed, pretending to look upset. I realized then she'd told him something dramatic to get him there. I said nothing. I didn't react. I just locked my daughter's door and stepped away from the car. Connor puffed up his chest. You need to stop threatening Megan, he snapped. I didn't laugh, even though the line was ridiculous. I haven't threatened anyone, I said, steady and calm. Leave. He walked closer. Too close. Don't talk to her like that. Megan chimed in, dramatic and shaky. Levi, just walk away. You're scaring me. That lie almost made me roll my eyes. Connor shoved me in the chest. Not hard, but enough to say he was serious. I stepped back once and said plainly, back away. He didn't listen. He swung at me. Wild, uncoordinated, sloppy. I moved out of the way easily, and when he stumbled forward, off balance, I landed one clean punch to his face, straight to the nose. He dropped instantly, hands clamped over his face, blood spilling between his fingers. Megan screamed, but not out of concern, out of shock. This was clearly not how she expected the scene to play out. 2 neighbors nearby yelled that they saw Connor swing first. One even said they'd call security if he tried anything again. I got in my car, checked on my daughter, and drove away calmly. The fallout was immediate. Connor stopped responding to her the next day. Then, the next, then completely. Blocked her on everything. He disappeared the way guys like him always do when they realize a fantasy turned into real responsibility and real danger. Megan was left alone with a newborn who wasn't mine. A broken marriage. No backup plan. And no one to blame except herself. And for the first time in months, I felt completely in control of my own life again. The custody agreement moved quickly because Megan didn't fight me on anything related to our daughter. She was drained, and I think she knew arguing would only drag things out and make everything harder on our girl. We settled on 50-50 custody. 1 week with me, 1 week with her. The newborn wasn't part of the agreement. After the DNA results and paperwork, he wasn't my child. Once Megan moved out, my home felt different. Not empty, just peaceful. I rearranged the living room, cleared out the bedroom, and turned the extra space into a play area for my daughter. On my weeks, I built a simple routine around her. Breakfast together, walking her into daycare, evening cartoons, baths, bedtime stories. She adjusted quickly. Kids adapt when the environment is safe. She slept better, too. Fewer nightmares, less waking up at night. That's when I realized how much tension she'd been absorbing while Megan was checked out. Megan's life went the other direction. She was in a small apartment with the newborn, Connor's son, and the weight of everything she'd done finally showed. She looked exhausted and angry every time I saw her. Every now and then, she tried guilt-tripping me, talking about how quiet my house must be, or how hard it was doing everything alone. I ignored it. I responded only when she talked about our daughter, school, doctor appointments, daycare, drop-off times. Nothing else. That emotional access to me was gone. She slipped a few times and brought up Connor, saying he wasn't answering, that he was just stressed, that he'd come around. I didn't respond to that either. Eventually, she stopped mentioning him. Meanwhile, life at my house started feeling good again. Normal, simple. I cooked more, put music on, kept the place clean but relaxed. My daughter would climb onto my lap after daycare and tell me about her day. She'd help me bake cookies, water the plants, or build pillow forts in the living room. A few months after the filing, friends started asking if I'd ever date again. At first, I brushed it off, but eventually I realized I had room for something new. Not out of loneliness, but because the chaos was gone. I met someone through a mutual friend. Her name was Claire. Quiet, kind, patient. She didn't push herself into my life or pry into my past. She just showed up as herself, and we clicked faster than I expected. I didn't introduce her to my daughter right away. I waited until I was sure this wasn't temporary. When I finally did, it was simple. A short meetup at a park. My daughter liked her instantly. They drew chalk on the sidewalk together, and Claire let my daughter lead. That told me everything I needed to know. Things between us stayed easy. It felt more grounded than anything I'd had with Megan in years. No games, no distance, no hidden motives, just a calm connection. As months went by, the divorce finalized. Megan kept to herself. She didn't have Connor anymore. From what I heard, he'd moved on completely. New job, new girlfriend, no involvement with her or the baby. She was raising his child alone. Reality had caught up. Whenever I picked up our daughter, I noticed the shift in Megan's energy. She looked drained, embarrassed sometimes, irritated other times. She knew I wasn't coming back. She knew she'd lost the stability she once had. She knew she'd traded a grounded life for a fantasy that collapsed fast. But that wasn't my problem anymore. My responsibility was my daughter, my home, and the future I was building. I came out of the whole situation stronger, not hardened, just clearer. I learned to stand firm, to protect myself and my daughter, and not to tolerate disrespect or betrayal from anyone. I didn't lose myself. If anything, I stepped more fully into who I was always supposed to be. Now, when I look at my life, the routine with my daughter, the peace in my home, the path in front of us, I'm proud I didn't break. I didn't let betrayal turn me bitter or unstable. I came out better on the other side. As for Megan, she lives with the consequences she created. No one punished her. She made her choices, and now she sits with the results. I walked away with my dignity, my daughter, my home, and a future that finally feels like mine again. And that's more than enough. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.